things like creative rest, because a lot of people, that's the type of rest that they're deplenished in. They no longer, so the rest deficit symptoms of that are that you no longer feel inspired. You maybe don't even love the work that you used to be passionate about. You have a hard time with innovation. You have a hard time with creativity. And that's what creative rest is for. It's the rest we experience when we allow ourselves to be inspired, to appreciate beauty for the sake of how beauty can unlock creativity inside of us, whether that's natural beauty like flowers and trees and grounding and all the different things we do there, or creative beauty like art or music and theater. And actually recognizing that it has a place in our lives that keeps us in a high level of awe and wonder and curiosity. Also, emotional rest. That was another one that I found that a lot of people were deficient in. They understood mental health, and they understood that their mind, their emotional part of their brain needed to be healthy, but they weren't sometimes looking at the fact that there was a high level of what I term professional emotional labor. And it's this intensity of stress on your emotions when you have to contain your emotions for the sake of professionalism. I think
Oh,
as a physician, this is the one that I was dealing with. I'm an empath. So I'm the type of person, I watch the commercials during the Super Bowl and I cry. I'm like, that's so beautiful. And when you have that kind of heart, when a person, and I work in the ICU and the ER, and I do traditional internal medicine, meaning I'm not just an outpatient doctor or just a hospitalist. I actually live in both worlds. I live in a small town, and I've been doing this long before hospitalists were even a thing. So I find myself in all of these locations. So when a patient comes to me and they are, and now in the ICU, this isn't a stranger to me. This is someone I know. I sometimes even know the spouse and the dog's name and the kids. I'm hurt. My friend is dying on that table. Everything in me may want to burst into tears, but you're never going to see a tear leave my eye. I've trained myself to have to take on the professional emotional labor. And some people are doing this as leaders. You
mm,
have to hire and fire. And sometimes, as an empath, maybe you get emotional about that. Or maybe you're the strong type and you don't want your kids or your family to know that your doctor just diagnosed you with something, or that you're dealing with a financial struggle or whatever it is. We have a lot of people carrying a lot of emotional load and they don't know where to release it. And that becomes the thing that's keeping them tired, and it limits us.
I can totally see that. And from empath all the way down to those of you listening who feel like maybe that word doesn't describe you, at minimum you're a human being with a mind and emotions, and there are certain requirements that come with carrying around that hardware of a human mind, that it does need rejuvenation. We do need time to restore. And I'm curious because the idea of, the idea of us being burned out, of being overstimulated, that impact on our nervous system is something that we're starting to talk about now. And we didn't get a chance to go into this, but I'm a psychologist by training, and I'm glad that we're finally starting to think about the connection between the mind and the body and how deeply connected they are via the nervous system. I'm curious about the ability of this broad scope of the way that you define rest as a way to balance and calm our nervous system. Because when that is overstimulated, when we're not in a state where we can think clearly or calmly or with more intention, it makes it really hard to do pretty much everything that's probably bringing people here. Change habits, introduce something new that might be healthier to them. So instead, we just rely on white knuckling and grit and willpower. But it feels like there's a better way if we could incorporate this broader definition of rest. So I'm curious about that connection between the nervous system and what it means to feel truly rested and rejuvenated.
Yeah, that's the beauty of rest, is that it actually does help us to get into a state, specifically a more parasympathetic, calm, relaxed state where our cortisol levels aren't through the roof and we're not we're not on low levels of adrenaline and fight or flight response, and we've gotten ourselves to a place where we are allowing all areas of our neurological system to take a breath. And I think too often we have learned and trained ourselves actually in the opposite. I find that some people will even say things like, I seem to function better under pressure, or I function
Mm.
better with that. It's basically using natural endorphins to give that little jolt like we get when we take caffeine. You know, you mentioned running. My husband's a ultra marathon runner, and he is always taking these little supplements, gels as they call them, that have a little hit of caffeine in them. What's the purpose of that? Is to spike up the sympathetic system, that fight or flight response in your body, the cortisol response, and get you out the gate a little bit faster. Many of us are doing that just in our lifestyle, just in the choices we make every morning, the way that we don't take a moment in the evening to even maybe have gratitude and to reflect on what good happened today, even if there was a lot of bad. Was there something good? Is there a way for me to take the limits off of the day and the limits off of the fact that maybe everything didn't work the way that I desired? But is there something that's good? Because it's
Mhm.
those kinds of shifts that then move us back into the parasympathetic, calm, relaxed, I'm okay, the world's okay, there's still possibility type of lifestyle.
Mhm. Yeah. Something I've encountered a lot in the US, especially. I was going to say in sort of Western culture, but it really is quite high here in the United States, is this idea of role engulfment, where we get very identified with the roles that we play, particularly in the US at work. So you've probably experienced it where you've gone to, a networking event or a happy hour or some sort of gathering like that, and somebody who doesn't know you, approaches you, and you do that sort of introduction mad libs where you ask someone, "Oh, tell me about you." And they say, "Oh, I'm April. I am the insert your title here of insert your department here at insert your company here." So we very much identify with the things that we do, how much we can get done, the titles that earn us, instead of finding balance in that and knowing that that's one side of the equation. We attach a lot of self worth to how much we can get done and what that means for some of those external titles and things. It's
Yeah, that
very hard to get out of that. How do we
interesting.
do
You
that?
actually went down that line of conversation because that's the um, after my book Sacred Rest came out, that was the conversation I had with so many people. It
Mm,
actually resulted in the second book that's called Being Fully Known, The Joyful Satisfaction of Beholding, Becoming, and Belonging. And I found that a lot of people, part of the pressure that was leading to their emotional and social rest deficits were the expectations that were attached to titles, roles, and identities that had expired, that no longer served them. They were there for a season of their life, but they were not meant to be the entirety of their life. And so that title became like a tomb. It became a stopping place where there was
mm.
no growth and there was no exploration and there was no opportunity to even imagine if there was anything beyond having achieved. And I think we have a lot of people who do live there. If you spent years training for a profession or you've put your blood, sweat, and tears to get to a certain level of success, you can start feeling like, but I did all this work. Why should I keep looking? And when
Uh,
we don't allow ourselves to stay in the place of curiosity about ourselves, it becomes a tomb. And we can experience that feeling of stagnation, that feeling of there is no joy, there is no peace. I'm not experiencing what I desire here. And I think the hard part of that is that you have to be honest with yourself. And I find that a lot of us are scared to be honest with ourselves. We're scared to say, yeah, I spent, you know, in my own case, I spent what, half my life learning to be a physician. And it's like, am I crazy for thinking that there's something else that maybe I would love to do after all of that time? And that's the thing. Most of the time, you're not crazy. We hear people talk about midlife crisis, and now we have quarter life and all all these other crises we call them. But when you see those people, they don't look to be in crisis. They look to be free. They're free from the limitations they've placed on themselves, and they're free to now explore again and to rediscover who they are and to become who they really are without letting the limitations of other people's expectations or even the limitations of the titles and degrees they've obtained to be their stopping point, to be their tomb.
I would love to go even deeper on that because I'm imagining my own husband, ER physician, trained
Hmm.
half his life to do this
I
one
understand.
job, right? And I feel everything you're saying because I can see it in him. And if I think about what would happen if he just made a 90-degree turn and said, "You know what? This is what the beginning of my career was meant to be, and now I'm moving on to something else." The the comments he would get from others, "I can't believe you wasted all that time. I can't believe you're throwing it all away." There is so much backlash that we get externally. And I'm just making there's a psychologist making a hypothesis here that I'm curious of your opinion on, a very informed opinion on, is if we are truly in balance, if we've allowed ourselves to have that rest and have gotten honest with ourselves about the fact that a path that we're on isn't working anymore, it seems to me like you could withstand that external pressure and handle it so much more effectively if you had given yourself that ability to rejuvenate. Like it wouldn't be so impactful if you weren't so worn down by it all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because when we are worn down, when we aren't well rested, when we are in that state of depletion and earlier functional burnout for a lot of people, it keeps us in a place where we are afraid to make any changes because we have no capacity for, as you mentioned, the backlash. We have no capacity for the voices around us, the people who are going to say different things, our own internal judgment and thoughts and rationales. We don't have any capacity to deal with any of that because we are just functional burnout. We are functioning with the little bit of energy that we have left, and that little bit of energy only is enough energy to keep grinding out what we already know. There's no energy for actually the new, for learning anything new, for growing, for any of that. And so I find that a lot of people, before they take those types of steps, they first have to do the internal work of healing some of these rest deficits, healing some of these places, getting a awareness of what kind of tired am I. That's where I start with every client, every coach, person that I coach, every company that I work with. If I'm working with leaders, what kind of tired are you? Because we have to identify where is the place that you have used the most and expended the most of your energy, because that is the place of greatest deficit. And if we start pouring back into that area, getting it back up to a healthy level, then it does, as you just mentioned earlier, it doesn't just affect, let's say, our physical. It then starts having effect on our emotional and the way that we respond, our nervous system. All of these, it's holistic. All of it starts coming together, which then positions you to be able to be more honest about how your body, your mind, your spirit is speaking to you about you.
Mm. Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I was just kind of giggling internally because leave it to a physician to develop a sort of diagnostic tool that figures out exactly what rest intervention or medicine you need so you're not giving yourself the thing that's not actually going to help or help in to the greatest degree given, what kind of tired you are. I love that.
I think that's the beauty of creativity in general. It's like you can only bring, you sit down to I love doing art and doing and kind of music and different creative type things. When you sit down to paint a picture, you only have the colors that are in front of you. And so when I sit down to do research, I only have what's in front of me, and that's a biochemistry major, years of medical research. So those are the things I bring to the table, and I love that. right now we're doing a certification program for people with our 7 types of rest framework. And I love that it's people who have absolutely nothing to do with medicine,
Mm.
educators, and, all these other creatives and all these other people from these other fields, because I could take this message and this framework so far based on what I bring to the table. But that's the thing, there's so many different layers to it, and other people who can do things with it, with the proper training and getting certification with that.